I want to thank everybody for your appearance here this morning. I know this is painful for you. There's a snowstorm coming later today, and you probably want to get ready to do the shoveling. But I'd also like to thank the staff of the hotel today for this wonderful breakfast. My guess is they don't get the accolades that they should, and so I know we all want to thank the the folks who fed us this morning. Thank you. My comments this morning are as the state treasurer and not as a trustee of the Maine Public Employees Retirement System. There is a new attitude in Augusta. It's very simple, is that we work for you. You're the customer. In Treasury, there are 14 strong, and there is a standing instruction, is that when the phone rings, we jump. I don't really care how high we have to jump, but we do, because on the other end of that phone is probably going to be one of our customers. Many of the new leaders in Augusta today are from the private sector. We get it. We understand that without the business community, we have nothing. You folks are the golden goose. You folks generate the tax revenues that we need to fund state government, and we will do everything humanly possible to help you. Now, it's very clear what we have to do in Augusta. It's very clear what we have to do in the state of Maine. It, frankly, is very clear what we have to do in this country. We don't need a study to tell us how to fix the mess that we're in. We all want the same thing, which is jobs so kids like Reed Dowdy can stay here. So the question is, how do we develop a business-friendly climate such that we can generate the jobs that we need and keep our young folks here? There are 6 things we have to do. First of all, we need to get our spending under control. We cannot spend our way to prosperity. If we are able, and when we are able to get our spending under control, that will allow us to reduce taxes and fees. And this is one of the major cost impediments of doing business in this state. We need to make it easier to do business in Maine. Simplify the regulatory environment. Now, I get every once in a while, Mr. Treasurer, the way you folks talk about creating a good business climate means that you're going to ruin our environment. Well, when I was a kid in Waterville, if you fell in the Kennebec River, you needed a tetanus shot. We are not going to ruin our environment. It's a $10 billion industry, tourism in the state of Maine, that employs 175,000 of our fellow Mainers. We're going to do everything we can to protect it. But part of quality of life is a paycheck. So we have to make sure we're mindful of that also. The governor is working very diligently on trying to get the cost of health insurance premiums and energy costs in the state of Maine down, and I spend most of my time on the 6th point, which is debt. You know, I sometimes feel like an undertaker on Halloween. You know, I'm traveling around the state talking about my favorite topic, debt, so let's dig right into it. This is what I call our debt profile. Now, each part of our debt component, or each component of our debt, is a little bit different. But any way you cut the mustard, the best I can figure out, the taxpayers of Maine are somehow, some way, eventually on the hook for about $12.5 billion. The red check mark at the top, the $500 million of general obligation bonds that the Treasury sells to raise money to build roads and bridges and other infrastructure projects in the state, have been approved by the taxpayers of Maine. You, maybe not you, but it has been approved in the voting booth. Now, we also have 7 independent authorities that have been created by the legislature, like the Maine Turnpike Authority, Maine Housing Authority, the Municipal Bond Bank, and others. They all have the opportunity to borrow money on their own by selling bonds. Now, there is very little oversight on these authorities. We are starting to change that. That is a very healthy thing. But if any of these authorities run into trouble, we know where they're going, to the taxpayers of Maine. Now, I have to state very clearly, none of these authorities are in financial trouble. They have other problems, but none of them are in financial trouble. The University of Maine has also borrowed $200 million. They issue their own debt. But the part of our debt profile that keeps me awake at night, absolutely gives me fits, is the $4.3 billion pension shortfall for our teachers and our state workers. Now, how did we get into this mess? Many, many years ago, pension benefits were promised to teachers and state employees without setting aside enough money to pay for them. And this compounded over a very long period of time. And then in 2008, the stock market crashed, and so our pension investments eroded, causing the problem we have today. Now, the teachers and our state workers did not create this problem. They were promised these benefits, and they want them. I don't blame them. However, the other 1.2 million taxpayers in the state of Maine who are helping to pay for these retirement benefits also didn't create the problem. They simply want to make sure there's enough money left behind to educate their kids and pave the roads. So we are in one heck of a pickle, and I'll show you why. This pension debt is unlike any other part of our debt profile because the annual payments to pay it off are spiking. Now, some folks will say, you know, Mr. Treasurer, some of your words are a little bit inflammatory. Where I come from in Waterville, we call it telling the truth. So we'll tell the truth. This next fiscal year, the taxpayers of Maine have to make a $443 million payment for these retirement benefits. Now, the blue line at the bottom is what we call the normal cost. These are the pension checks that we're writing out every year, about $100 million of that. And everything in red is the shortfall. We're playing catch-up because of fiscal policies that were reckless in the past. Now, just to give you a sense of comparison, this $443 million payment is almost double what we spend to support our universities and our community college system. In 10 years, the number is $894 million. 1 year's payment. That happens to be about what we spend to support every single K through 12 public school in the state of Maine. Now, this is not Washington, where you can avoid your problems by just printing money. The state of Maine must balance its budget every year. There's only one state that doesn't. It doesn't have to, and that's Vermont. But 49 states must balance our budget. So this is real money that we must address. Now, some folks are saying, well, Bruce, it can't be that bad. It's all right, let's look at the numbers. Because we do not have $4.3 billion that we can write out in a check today, invest the money, and be done with it, we have to make annual payments for the next 17 years when the Maine Constitution says we must pay off this debt. So it's sort of like a home mortgage or a car loan. We have to make these annual payments. Now, when you add up 17 years of these annual payments, it does not total $4.3 billion. It totals $13 billion. So, when someone says, well, Bruce, it can't be that bad, here's what we did. We simply took the $13 billion and we divided it by our population, which is about 1.3 million people. So what this is telling us is that every man, woman, and child in the state of Maine is on the hook for about $10,000 for this one part of our public debt. Now, if we just look at our tax filers, there are 653 entities in the state of Maine that file a tax return, either businesses or individuals. And if you look at those 653,000 filers, they're on the hook for about $20,000 to pay off this one part of our public debt. And some folks say, well, you know, Bruce, other states have a problem too. It can't be that bad, all right? Let's look at the numbers. These are not my numbers. These are Moody's Investor Service. This is one of the bond rating agencies. And what we're trying to do here is to demonstrate how difficult it is for our small, low-wage economy to pay off this debt. So the top part of this page shows the smaller number, the $4.3 billion debt that if we could write a check today, how big that is relative to our total economy, the gross domestic product in the state of Maine. And what it shows you is that it's almost twice as difficult for our state to pay off this debt as the average of the other New England states, the rest of the 49 states, or other rural states in the country. Now, the bottom half of this graph is even more alarming. What it does is it relates this $4.3 billion debt to our annual revenues. And what this shows is that the pension debt is about 133.5% of our annual cash flow. Now, here's another way to look at it. If we shut down state government for 16 months, 1 1/3 years, all you kids from Cape Elizabeth and Portland High School, you get a vacation for 16 months, no school. Those that are the most disadvantaged among us, no transfer payments, no state police, no fishing licenses, no court system. We shut it down for 16 months. And then every single tax dollar that's collected in the state of Maine that passes through Treasury for 16 months, then we'd have enough money to pay off this debt. This is big and this is real. In the governor's proposed budget that is now before the legislature, there are several components to it. One is a set of reforms to help us deal with this growing fiscal monster. I think they are reasonable, they are fair, and they're of shared sacrifice. Now, if you're retired, in this system, we will not cut your pension checks. But what we are asking you to do is for the next 3 years, forego any cost of living increase adjustment. And beyond 3 years, cap it at 2%. If you are still working, but you're in the system, in accruing benefits, what we're asking you to do is pay another 2% towards your own retirement, 2% of your salary. And then if you're not yet vested, you're a new hire or haven't been hired yet, you've been there less than 5 years, we're asking you to retire at age 65 instead of age 62. When you put all of these together, here's the result. The green line has different data points, and we connected those data points. And what it shows you that is if we adopt these reforms, then everything above the green line is gone. So the $443 million payment that we have to make next fiscal year drops to $192 million. And then in 10 years, instead of having to make a $900 million payment, we're required to make one that's about $300 million, which is manageable. Now, what I have been hearing often is, Bruce, why do we have to address this problem now? I mean, this has been going on for a long time. Why now? Well, first of all, the annual payments to pay off this 1/3 of our public debt are spiking. And so what's happening is the legislature is going to get to a point where increasingly they have to make some very tough decisions. Do we adequately fund our roads and bridge repair? Do we educate our kids as best we can? Or do we pay for these pension benefits? That's the problem. It's starting to crowd out our ability to fund other services. Second of all, it is a business attraction issue. I mean, think about it. As business folks that we all are, business leaders and entrepreneurs are attracted to states that are fiscally prudent. They don't want to go to a place where they know there's a high probability their taxes will go up or public services will be cut because the state can't live within its means or can't address these long-term fiscal issues. Fiscal prudence is the foundation of a healthy private sector. We have an opportunity here to be one of a small number of states who really gets it and does not kick this can down the street any longer, but deals with the issue. Now, we have, in a short period of time, some very serious discussions coming up with the bond rating agencies about our general obligation debt. They have been and continue to be very concerned about our cash flow issues in the state. Essentially, our private sector has been so anemic for so long because of high costs and regulatory impediments that we're not generating the cash that we need to pay our bills and pay off our debt. Helping to solve this big problem will go a long way towards helping our cash flow problems and protecting our bond rating. And fourth, this is the perfect time to do this. We have private sector people up in Augusta that understand this issue. We are increasing the awareness of this issue across the state. The political climate is right, and the economic climate is right to address this issue, and we should do so. Now, there have been 4 or 5 different strategies that I've heard about how to address this issue, other than paying off the debt. It is so painful that a lot of folks say, you know, Bruce, there's got to be a better way. And some folks are saying, let's extend the 2028 deadline. Let's kick this can down the street a little bit further. Well, let me give you a little bit of history. During the past 20 years, when times have been tough in Augusta, what the governor and the legislature has done is refinanced the mortgage. They've extended the amortization period because that drops the annual payments. And then when times are good, they shorten the payback period and put more money in the pot. This is the retirement security for 70,000 of our teachers and our state workers. Let's have the courage to look in the mirror, tell the truth, and deal with it. If we kick this can down the street and try to open up the Maine State Constitution because this is too painful to deal with, that is the worst possible message to send to the business community. Maine still doesn't get it. They are still not trying to create a healthy environment for business investment and job creation. Some folks have even said, I've got an idea. Let's borrow the money. I have a story for you. In 2003, the state of Illinois had a problem with their pension fund. So they decided to sell $10 billion worth of bonds to borrow that amount of money to put into their pension fund. Now, in order to sell the bonds, they had to attach a 5% coupon, a 5% interest rate to the bonds in order to sell them. They took the $10 billion and then earned 3% on the proceeds. All right, what's happening in Illinois today? They still can't balance their budget. Governor Quinn in the legislature has raised personal income taxes by 67%. They've raised business taxes by 46%. They have a $78 billion pension shortfall. Companies are shutting down, jobs are leaving, and so are the kids. Oh, and they also have another $10 billion to deal with. Borrowing $4.3 billion to pay off this debt is a very high-risk strategy. I have counseled the legislature as best I can. Please don't do that. Then some folks are saying, let's change the period of time when we value our debt. Now, every 2 years, the Maine Public Employees Retirement System, with their actuaries, takes a snapshot of our debt. And we then submit this to the various governing bodies in Augusta so we know how much we owe. We've been doing this for a very long period of time, and the 2-year cycle coincides with our 2-year budget. Well, some folks are saying, you know, the stock market's done so well recently, let's value the debt right now. I bet it's not as big. I mean, that's gaming the system. That's like saying, I'm in this football game here, I don't like the score, so let's change the dimensions of the field. This would be so transparent. I don't think the actuaries would even approve it. And oh, by the way, if we were to do that now and value the debt, that $443 million payment next year drops to $413 million. It doesn't solve the problem. Some folks say, I know what we can do. Let's raise taxes just by a penny. We've been doing this for 30 years. It is this drip, drip, drip that has gotten us in part in this problem. Taxes must go the other way, not up. Otherwise, we continue to increase the cost of doing business and living in this state. And lastly, of course, is doing nothing, which I would advise against. Now, I'd like everybody, now that I've given you the bad news, to imagine what a great state this place could be. We already know it's the most wonderful place in the world to live. That's why we're all here. But imagine a state that lives within its means, a state that's fiscally disciplined and prudent, a state that spends less, taxes less and regulates less. A place that is attractive for folks to come here and invest their capital, and create jobs so these young adults can stay here. That is my vision for this great state. I know we can get there. This is a very small state, and this is how you can help. What I have found in my 3 months in Treasury is that when legislators get 10 emails, it's a real problem. It's very serious. When they get 20 emails, it's a crisis. I am asking you to corner your legislators. Email them. Corner them at McDonald's or Wendy's. Letters to the editor, talk radio, speak out, spread the word. Right now, the governor's budget with these pension reforms are in the hands of the legislature. They will vote by late May or early June. Weigh in. It's your state. I am delighted for the opportunity, Mark, to speak to this distinguished group. I feel tremendous camaraderie with the private sector here, but if they have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.